cause of me enlisting in the military, I'm going to put bluntly, is poverty. It was not only a family lineage of poverty, and why my grandfather was in World War II and my uncle was in Vietnam, but led me to join during 9/11, right after the towers crashed. It it was embedded in me, for survival. Like, did I want to sign up and give my life? At the time I did, right? It seemed an honorable thing. But the driving force is, you know, free education, housing, stability for a steady career.
Join me, Jeremy Swick, on Into the Unknown, a podcast that delves into the personal journeys, stories, and experiences of individuals across diverse professions. As a historian by trade, I firmly believe that our personal histories shape our present and offer valuable insights into our paths ahead. With that being said, let's get into it. On this episode of Into the Unknown, I am joined with a very special guest, Simone Swartz. How are you doing this, Simone?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to share my story. So thank you so much.
I'm really excited to get into your story today. It's always so fascinating, everyone's different experiences. And one of the reasons I created this show was to have that opportunity for people to share their stories, because I don't think enough people realize how unique their life is.
Yeah, as a survivor and as a veteran, I feel committed now that I've healed and I'm on this part of my journey. I feel that it's very important for me to share my story. So I really appreciate any media and you and your podcast for giving this voice to people who need their stories to be shared. So thank you.
I always like to kick off the show and talk about the importance of networking. How are we actually connected?
Yeah, so we connected through a Facebook group on podcasts. So social media is amazing sometimes. Yeah.
It's one of those things about social media, because I often get that response, oh, it's amazing, or oh, it's the worst. And of course, there's different levels to it. But one of the things I've loved, it's created so much community, whether you're a podcast host looking for incredible guests or you're looking to get on podcasts. It's really one of those things that I love, how it brings people together and have those, share those similar stories.
Yeah, just as anything, it can be used positively or negatively. So using social media positively, that's that's good. you know, that's how we should be using it. More, let's say. So
I couldn't agree more. To start off the show, I want to know a little bit more about you. That comic book issue #1, that origin story. Who's Simone?
yeah, so I'm Simone Swartz. I'm an author. I'm a mother, an Army veteran, a military sexual trauma survivor, a traumatic brain injury survivor from that sexual assault. And now I'm a motivational speaker, a life coach, and I share my story in hopes to change what caused my sexual assault and the cover up, and also, to offer hope to other survivors that PTSD is treatable, and to amplify the voice that mental health is important, but it doesn't have to, negatively affect your life. Mental health can be something that is in your control no matter what trauma has happened to you. And there is a healthy life after trauma.
I appreciate that. Now take me back. What made you originally decide to join the military, or how did that journey unfold?
So this question gets political quick, but now, as a survivor using my voice, I do like to amplify all things of my story, negative or positive, or the good, the bad, and the ugly. But the real cause of me enlisting in the military, I'm going to put bluntly, is poverty. It was not only a family lineage of poverty, and why my grandfather was in World War II and my uncle was in Vietnam, but led me to join during 9/11, right after the towers crashed. It it was embedded in me, for survival. Like, did I want to sign up and give my life? At the time, I did, right? It seemed an honorable thing. But the driving force is, you know, free education, housing, stability for a steady career. So now looking back, I see that, if I had a different option in front of me, to not potentially get PTSD or, potentially get killed, then I probably would have taken that choice. But being in a capitalistic society, that choice was not afforded to me at the time. And so, I signed up for the military happily. And I signed up really wanting to take that sacrifice, and saying, okay, whatever happens, happens. But I'm going to serve my country honorably. But what happened was my country and the Army did not, in return, serve me honorably. It did not treat me as a human being. It treated me as a disposable commodity. It negatively affected my mental health. It destroyed my career, and it almost destroyed my voice. But years later, now I have regained my voice, and that's why I will not be silent, and that's why I advocate so hard. And I've chosen this career as a PTSD life coach to help others who have been in similar situations, because the reality is that the military is a very, very difficult career field for anyone. Military people have much higher rates of homelessness, extremely high rates of being addicted to drugs, uh, extreme rates compared to civilian populations to be in the judicial system. The men in the military and who have served have much higher rates of sexual assault compared to civilians. And of course, the women encounter sexual assault in the military, as I did, at much higher rates. And uh, suicide after military service or during military service is much higher, maybe access because of access to weapons. But I believe also because there is not enough access to mental health support and mental health awareness. And the military doesn't even foster an environment where it's safe to speak out if you do have mental health concerns, or if you do just want to talk about anything that's bothering you in your career or that has happened. So the whole environment is extremely tolling on your mental health, and that's why I have my commitment to raise health in general and raise awareness about PTSD, because those of us with PTSD have to work much harder to maintain our health and our mental health. So it's something that, the population needs to be aware of, so that if you are experiencing PTSD symptoms, even as a civilian, this is something I talk about, that there's civilians in America that have experienced war and gun violence that didn't sign on the dotted line, that weren't prepared to give their life or watch somebody die in front of them. So, not only just veterans witness this and experience PTSD, but so many civilians in America are experiencing warlike scenarios right here in America. So, in general, all of us are experiencing PTSD on some levels. So, it's very important to acknowledge this and see what we can do about keeping our health and mental health a top priority.
Simone, I'd like to ask you what prompted you, as you mentioned, you didn't have a voice for quite a while. What prompted you to realize or decide to take that take that voice back?
Well, what prompted me was the start of my nonprofit. I decided to, and with my PTSD symptoms, I had participated in a social media blackout, right? I did not use social media or really, even the computer for a long time. And that was to protect my mental health, but almost to, to avoid parts of my mental health as well, right? Not being on the news, not being on social media, kind of avoiding things. But on, God, was it my 35th birthday? I believe I decided, and this was after I got my service dog, and Gunner really changed my life so much. The idea of starting a nonprofit to give sexual assault survivors, civilian and military service dogs. The need was there, and the program was there. I connected with people that could get this going, dog trainers and shelters that would provide the dogs to be trained into service dogs. I said, well, let me make this post let me go on social media for good. And I'm going to make a post on, a social media website, GoFundMe, and I'm going to make a post asking for donations to start the nonprofit because it takes money to start a good idea. Just because you have a good idea doesn't mean that it's so that it's going to take off. I needed a lot of thousands of dollars to start the nonprofit, just the paperwork. So I made a post telling my story. And this was the first time my mom had even known about the sexual assault in the military. So I, was healed enough from years of therapy and doing my own modalities, and having my service dog was the icing on the cake. So I felt safe and I wanted to speak out, right? I'd really been angry that 10 years of my life were gone because of PTSD. Were highly affected because of PTSD. And so I said, no more. But I really hoped that my post wouldn't go anywhere. I really hoped that nobody did see the post and I could just say that I tried and that, okay, I put it out there. And, I can check that off my list and keep going. But actually somebody did see the post, and it did end up, I ended up raising, like, to the dollar, just the amount that the attorney needed to start the paperwork and finish the incorporation of the nonprofit. So that was my sign. I said, okay, let's start it. I don't have enough money to actually start the program now, but at least we're incorporated. And so, then the world did find out about my story, and it was very freeing, and it was very healing for me, and it brought community from all over the world. It really touched a lot of people's lives just hearing about this idea that hadn't even been started yet. So that was surprising to me, since I had been off of social media for a long time, and I didn't realize the impact that it had, from the years that had been absent from it. It had changed and grown a lot. So that's the story of how it got started. And now, actually, I have stepped down from the nonprofit, but the mission of bringing awareness to PTSD, sexual assault, and service dogs has grown on a larger level. where I'm speaking about my book and my workbook on PTSD, but I'm doing it not in confines of one state. I'm doing it globally now. So my mission has grown, and the nonprofit is still in operation in Maine. And I have now, like I said, stepped on to bigger stages to raise awareness on much more levels, and because the PTSD epidemic and sexual assault affects so many people that it's a huge thing that needs awareness for one, and then solutions. So, and service dogs might not be the right solution for everyone. That's something too, that service dogs are a big commitment, and it's not always the right solution for somebody with PTSD. It can help a lot of people with PTSD, but your life and your commitment and your level of symptoms needs to be correct to be able to care for a, I want to say human being, but an animal, right? that I consider, animals, my equal. Um, so yeah, but you have to be well enough to care for yourself and another being. So
Simone, I want to say appreciate you sharing your story and your transparency, especially in the sense of hoping that it will go nowhere. And I think so many times, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're launching a nonprofit or whatever it have may be, especially with kind of the intense personal narrative that your story has, is I've heard it before that, oh well, maybe if it doesn't go anywhere, I can say I tried, I checked it off my list, I can feel like that part of that journey's over, and maybe I can move on to something next. But I think it's so interesting how the universe is like, oh nope, you're not getting off that easy. We want to see you. You want to see this through, and it's so incredible because I think obviously without that part of the story, I don't know if you get to the global stages and where you are now.
yeah, that's true. The universe, the great magnet, God, Allah, whatever you want to call it, um, I believe does, you know, have a purpose for our life. I don't believe pain is the purpose. I don't believe pain gives us power or strength at all. Like I don't think my assault was the reason for this to be caused, right? I don't like to subscribe to that. I call it toxic positivity outlook. As good as it sounds, but trauma does cause more trauma. If you've been sexually assaulted uh, one time in your childhood or as an adult, you're over 50% more likely to have it happen again. It's not just a one-time thing. So, as much as I'd like to say that, my trauma birthed this nonprofit and birthed more awareness and healing for PTSD, in reality, it was my determination to keep going and to give that trauma purpose, to assign a positive outlook on the trauma that was inflicted on me, and make it worthwhile and make it a better mission. Or else there's so many people that that just don't recover from trauma, and that's not at any fault of their own. Trauma is trauma, right? But if you do believe that you're given another day and that life is a blessing, you have to create that positivity in your life. It's not just going to come to you. Or else, like I said, that you've been traumatized, it's just going to snowball if you don't take active steps and conscious steps to add some positivity to your life. And that was another reason that I decided to start the nonprofit, because I was at that healing point in my journey that you can plateau. You've overcome things, and you could say your life's great, but until you start giving back or stepping out of your comfort zone even more to helping others, then you can go back to addictive behaviors or self-destructive behaviors because you haven't given your life a new mission. And giving back and volunteering and that social aspect is so important to trauma recovery that is missed in much of conversations today and traditional therapy. And that's where my book and my story, my workbook really attack PTSD as a whole human approach is what I call it, because just traditional talk therapy is not going to help most people. I don't speak against it. I think everybody does. Even if you haven't occurred trauma in your life, you need to get into therapy. Therapy is a great thing. But if you've experienced severe trauma, just talking about it is not going to give you the healing that you need. It's on many levels that PTSD affects. So you have to attack it on all these levels if you really want to, quote, get over your trauma, or start a new life, a positive, healthy one. So that's, that's how I take, that's my take on that.
Simone, I appreciate that outlook, and it makes a ton of sense to me. On everyone's journey, you make a decision, not really knowing the outcome. Can you give me a time in your life, whether it's the nonprofit or whatever it may be, that you just went for it and how it turned out?
My reasoning for stepping down from the nonprofit was very personal, and I don't want to distinctly get into. Well, I don't think the details are that important, but that healing from trauma requires you to adapt to change, and I think that's the problem with a lot of people with PTSD, and why a lot of people don't recover from trauma is because the traditional way of looking at it is like, okay, we talk about this one event and, you get over that, but you're not taught how to live healthy in case some other trauma happens, which it definitely will, right? We know this world is full of horrible things. And so, being able to adapt when more bad things happen in your life, that's true healing and true dedication to your health and your mental health. And yeah, me being able to pivot from, this nonprofit that was my baby, this idea that I birthed and, still feel so strongly about, but being able to pivot into, I didn't know that my book and going solo would take off and be an even greater mission. It was scary. But instead of letting adversity, really get me down and different situations in my life, I said, no, I've started a business before, many businesses, I'll start another one. And God blessed it, and God blesses me because I feel that I am able to adapt. And that's part of the intense healing that PTSD survivors need to take on, because yes, you can get over one trauma, but there's going to be more. You need to. It's not just about getting over, quote unquote, what has happened to you. It's about changing your life healthy, and having a health and yourself as your number one, goal, right? Your number one, you know, priority in your life, so that you can take care of others, can take care of your children, can take care of your stress at your job, or can take care of others. Just sharing your story. I mean, you don't even have to share it on podcasts. There could be somebody in your life that you meet on the train that you don't know if they have the same story as you, and you might just positively affect somebody's life because you're healed enough to say, hey, I see you're crying. Are you, I've been through some things too. And, guess what? I exercise every day now. I take a break when I need to, stepping down from the nonprofit, although I didn't want to at all, that was a need that I needed for myself. I needed to be able to speak freely, my complete story, and not be censored by a board or, by be around people that might not share wholeheartedly in my bigger mission of, not just service dogs, but PTSD in general, that PTSD is much more than just service dogs. It's on so many levels. Civilian, like I talk about, civilian gun violence, combat gun violence, and military. But there's so many layers that we can talk about. And pivoting is important, and it's blessed my life. Even though for a long time, I did cry about that situation and not really know, you don't know what's going to happen when you make a change, right? It can be scary. But the will to keep going and your health being priority, and not saying, I'm not going to go back to yes, it's uncomfortable, but do I want to go back to drinking every day? Do I want to go back to being angry every day? Or am I going to, change, really keep on this trajectory of healing and have a scary life in front of me? I don't know what's going to happen. My old ways of dealing with trauma were self-harm behaviors. But, if you have this in the back of your mind or the front of your mind that, health is your number one priority, then that's where the positivity ball rolls. Okay, more positive things bring more positive things. If you don't have positive things in your life, you need to create it, or else, your trauma is going to ball up and it's going to, that magnet's going to attract, more negativity. So that's, that's where the positive and health need to be a number one priority in people with trauma, so that they don't slide back into negative behaviors, dealing with adversity or uncomfortable situations or change in their life.
Simone, I couldn't agree more, and I appreciate your transparency and sharing your story. As we close out, title of the podcast, Into the Unknown, where can people learn more about you speaking, your book, your workbook, and all that?
Yes, my website is www.ptsdandwhathelpedme.com. You can reach out to me there for coaching. We kick PTSD's ass. That's what I coach my clients to do. And also on social media, you could please follow me on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok under the same is PTSD and What Helped Me. And my book and workbook is available on the Big A. You can search the name, but I think you have to search my name as well, Simone Swartz. Amazon is being doing what they do, and apparently it's very hard to search for the book when you just type in the title. So, it's easier to go to my website, ptsdandwhathelpedme.com, and I have the links right there. So thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Simone, I really appreciate you sharing your story, your transparent and authentic story, and we'll be in contact soon.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Another fun episode of Into the Unknown. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen, and if it provides you any value or entertainment, I would love if you shared it with others, liked, subscribed, and really just help the podcast grow. Again, tell a friend, tell a foe, just anyone who might enjoy hearing some stories of people's own journeys and what got them to where they are today. Till next time.